Let's move on though to our next guest, Annabelle Richard from Pinsent Masons. Hello there, Annabelle.
Hello again, everyone.
You're going to give us your take, am I correct, on use of health data in Europe and the work you've done on that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel it's almost taking a step backwards compared to the talk that we just heard from Maya and Sunny, because data, of course, is the fuel for AI. As part of my role within Pinsent Masons, I spend a lot of time with data and a lot of time with my clients, trying to address, both their expectations and how they want to be able to use data to move forward with their innovation, or activities and so on. But also the difficult issue of doing that and remaining compliant with the various regulatory frameworks that are applicable to them. In addition to my work at Pinsent Masons, I am a member of Renaissance Numérique, which a bad translation would be Digital Rebirth, which is the main independent French think tank dedicated to the challenges of digital transformation in society. It brings together academics, associations, large companies, startups, schools, etc., to develop operational proposals to support public actors, citizen and economic actors in building a more inclusive digital society. In February 2020, we decided to launch a new working group that would be dedicated to the governance and sharing conditions of health data. The starting point of our work and our reflection was a shared consensus on the usefulness, of course, of digital data for the healthcare system. But more precisely, the usefulness of sharing and exploiting health data, with a recognition that the potential of data must be harnessed to serve the healthcare system and citizens, both in France, of course, and at EU level. Indeed, provided it's used with all the guarantees that its sensitivity requires, we know that health data can be used to improve, streamline the healthcare pathways, develop telemedicine, move scientific research forward, in particular in epidemiologic research, steer the healthcare system and develop preventive medicine. In France, we've had a focus in, I would say, governmental strategy, particularly with preventive medicine and so on, which has been not as successful as we could expect. And that was part of the reasons why we started this group, wanted to know more about all this. So for about a year, a working group brought together a dozen members of the think tank, researchers, healthcare professionals, lawyers, digital industry professionals who put their expertise to come up with concrete recommendations on these issues. In addition to this internal process, the think tank also interviewed players who could provide feedback on the subject through a series of hearings that were meant to represent the diversity of the health data value chain, including at European level. That's how we got to hear people from Microsoft, Habot, Watch Laboratories, but also the French Health Data Hub, the French Data Protection Authority, the French Ministry of Health and Solidarity, and so on. I'm not going to list all of them because if I'm correct, there were more than 40 of them. It led to the publication of a white paper that we decided to title Health Data, Getting Citizens on Board. I will not have time today to go through the entire document, which of course I encourage you to read. I will provide the link to the document in English in the chat. Instead, I will focus on some of our findings and recommendations. So one of our first finding or thought was that there were many challenges surrounding health data. First of all, and very importantly, just to understand or to agree to what is health data. The GDPR gives a very broad definition of the expression. There is even a broader definition in the French texts, and generally, international organizations all agree around the same type of broad definition, which led us to identifying three types of health data. There's the health data by nature. So it's all the product of data within the medical system, if I can say it like that. So it could be the result of a biological examination, the consultation report from any doctor, a list of treatment, etc., etc. Then we consider there is also health data by cross-referencing. So that would be data which by nature is not necessarily related to health, but when you match it with another type of data, becomes health data. For example, a person's weight by itself is not health data, but if you cross-reference it with a person's height, it is possible to calculate the body mass index, which in turn makes it possible to deduce or assume some information on a person's health status. And finally, we identify the health data by purpose, which is not, again, medical data by itself, but it can become health data depending on the person who is processing it and the intent of that person. For example, if an individual is making a daily diary of the list of foods he or she eats, the information collected in the diary is not health data. But if that person sends this logbook to a healthcare professional as part of their healthcare pathway, then the information it contains becomes health data. It means that health data forms an extremely heterogeneous category of data, the legal nature of which varies depending or according to whether they are produced within the framework of the healthcare pathway or outside of it, but also according to the intention of the person processing the data and the role of that person. It means that our generic regulatory framework, such as the GDPR, for example, is exactly that, very generic, compared to a type of data which can be very heterogeneous and the differences can be subtle depending on circumstances, environment, and so on and so on. Health data is also highly sensitive assets whose exploitation raises a number of questions, including ethical question mentioned notably by Maya, and for example, on the question of sharing and processing health data, particularly if sharing is against the fee, so selling health data. But also when you talk about digitalization of the health data and the way they are used, and inequality in the access to technology, and to a certain extent in access to care. We thought we needed to question the governance and conditions for sharing health data because of this, it's difficult to say for me in English, heterogeneity. The fact that often they're not interoperable, that they do carry a very high value potentially, at least for the individuals, not necessarily from an economic perspective, but from an individual perspective. And also the increasing diversity of actors involved in their production, collection, sharing, and reuse. We wondered if there wasn't a risk that the exploitation of this data, which leads to the development of new digital health tools, would reinforce inequalities in access to healthcare system at a time where in France, 1 person in 6 does not use internet on a regular basis. So that is part of our reflections, but we also thought about the current circumstances, and we wondered whether this was not a new momentum for what we considered health democracy. Because of the pandemic, because of everything that happened, but also because of the development of technology, and the new possibilities offered by it, we've seen that there's the roles and responsibilities of everyone along the healthcare systems are evolving. Patients and patients associations, healthcare professionals, but also health industry, digital actors, startups, and so on. The patients become users, contributors evaluators, and sometimes even caregivers and experts tend to increasingly connected medical devices. Every single patient now thinks that, by going on the internet, and researching their symptoms or something like that, they can be also, as knowledgeable as some healthcare professionals. But we also see healthcare professionals and medical social players seeing their role evolve with the support of new clinical decision support tools, and particularly AI. It's changing their role, like in many other professions, the legal ones including. And digital players are increasingly investing in the field of healthcare, of course. So in this constantly changing environment, we wondered how it was possible to ensure a clear and effective governance of health data. All this led us to a number of recommendations to the society in general, of course, with a slight focus on France, but it's more general than that. So among the first type of recommendations, we thought that there should be a commitment to serious acculturation efforts in terms of health data, and more generally, in terms of digital health. We thought that these efforts must be directed towards the stakeholders in the healthcare chain, so healthcare professionals, patients associations, and so on, right down to the citizens, including new entrants such as tech stakeholders who are investing in the fields of healthcare and are not familiar with its underlying issues. Indeed, we felt that to a certain extent there was a level of disconnect between these various stakeholders, and that we're not on the same page, to make it simple, did not understand or read, the challenges related to the use of health data in the same way, and that needed to be addressed. We also thought that certain professions, such as pharmacists, nurses, and doctors, have a role to play in disseminating this health culture. And we thought they could become kind of mediators, trusted third parties that would be acting at the interplay between citizens and the other stakeholders in the chain. And they must be, for that purpose, supported and empowered by the state, the industry, and again, all the stakeholders. We also thought that patients, users, consumers associations also have a very important role to play in this acculturation effort, provided that they increase their skills on the health data topic. We see in France a lack of real understanding, acknowledgement, again, of the challenges around the use of health data. And we think that it's absolutely critical that patients and citizens do seize, this topic and make it their own issue in order for society to be able to move forward with these topics. In addition to the digital mediation policy, should be massified in order to make all citizens, as I was saying, familiar with the issues related to health data. And again, they should be supported in their use of digital health, which leads to, of course, a more general support on the use of by citizens of all digital tools. We thought that there was a second type of recommendation that we should make, which purpose would be to clarify health data governance. So to start with, we thought we needed a clarification on the governance of health data and clarifying the roles of the various stakeholders, strengthening the collaboration between them, and between those who are involved in the steering of public policy on health data. We feel that sometimes there's a game of, always considering that the person next to you is the one responsible, for, again, feeling in charge of the topic and making it move forward. We feel that in France particularly, but that's also true to a certain extent at European level, we could clarify the roles and responsibilities of all. We think that the various stakeholders in the healthcare chain should also, the various stakeholders should be encouraged to share their data more widely. There should be incentive tools and mechanisms, maybe data trust, contractual solution, technical tools, whatever. Some exists and should be more widely used as a legal professional. I think that's one of the major points. I think that the question of data ownership is a particular challenge on these questions. There is a reluctance, and we've seen it during our interviews between the various private actors. There is a reluctance to share data with others, whether they are public entities, or some of their competitors, because they feel that once they've transferred the data, they lose entire control over it. They may also be ignored at a later stage. If anything comes out of the processing of their data, they feel that they will not be able to request a part of recognition on the results that will be obtained through them. And so I think this question is particularly important to address. Finding mechanisms to incentivize sharing data is extremely important. But we should also be clarifying, again, the governance on health data and require a more effective implementation of the requirements relating to technical interoperability and security standards, encouraging stakeholders to adopt the standards set by the ANS, and require hospitals and others to be HDH certified or to use HDH certified services. So as I said, and I think this standardization effort, it was also mentioned by Sunny and Maya in their presentation. And we need, also we thought there were a recommendation around putting the citizens at the heart of health data governance, which was a key element, for the success of future regulations and policies, around health data. The citizens need to be at the heart of the healthcare systems. They need to be able to play a greater part in the collective decisions that need to be taken on health data. They need to be consulted, and we need to implement mechanisms to be able to consult them more efficiently. They need to be more represented in the health data governance body. And they must be able to share their data directly in order to help assess the quality of healthcare and to regulate the healthcare system through data and take an active part in the healthcare system.